We are live.
Excellent. And we are being live streamed. I got it. Excellent. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. This is the Buncombe County Home and Community Care Block Grant Advisory Committee's monthly meeting. We have a couple folks that are missing, Rebecca, Cindy, and Jen, and Taylor will be joining us when she can. So shall we get started on approving the agenda? Do I hear a motion?
Motion.
Second? Second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we'll continue with the agenda. Billy's meeting minutes. Are there any revisions? Nope. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So
Motion
moved.
to approve, yes. Second.
Second.
Excellent. So I see Taylor's name. Hi, welcome.
Thanks.
All you missed was the revision of the agenda and the meeting minute approval. So we're on to the year-end summaries. I know I sent everybody a lot of information.
Yes, you did.
So this is the one, the 9-pager. And before comments, I really want to appreciate all the hard work that Billy did to compile this document. It's got a lot of information. And the other thing I want to highlight is that we have continued with the format which highlights the results-based accountability, so that basically the first section talks about how much we did. The second one was how well did we do it? And then the third is basically, is anyone better off?
Yeah, I found this very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, Billy.
Thank you very much, Billy. This is great.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
You do a great job. Don't ever stop.
Yeah, I find the measurements helpful and sort of a good way to compare from year to year.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of our first year with this kind of comprehensive look. So thank you, Billy.
And this is, and Billy, this is posted on the county's website, correct?
It's posted on the HCCBG advisory engaged page. So any documents that are sent out for each meeting, and then they're included on the engaged page. So the public can see this if they go to the engaged page.
Excellent. I know sometimes I'm frustrated with the fact that we can't give everybody everything they want because of our limited budgets and funding levels, but this is very encouraging when you look at it and you can see, that these funds do have an impact and what that impact is for folks.
That's important.
Well, very good. Any additional comments about the report? Any of the providers stand out to you? Okay. Well, shall we go on to our bylaw revisions? So Zach, can you do me a favor and put those up on the screen, please? And I note from my copy here that the first change really is in that conflict of interest section, which is Article 2, Section 1A. There, oh,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. Okay.
I think there should be a not in the second bullet point where it says this does not preclude members from advocating for aging services as a whole.
Okay.
Is that correct? Or
Eileen, the second bullet point, how should it read? How should it read?
I think it should say, okay, so they shall not, that's the sentence. To further eliminate appearance of a conflict, committee members shall not advocate on behalf of one funded agency when acting in the role of an HCCBG committee member, committee members, or member. I think that should also be singular, but that's not a big deal. This does or does not preclude members from advocating for aging services as a whole. I thought we would say it does not preclude members from advocating for aging services as a whole.
Oh, I
just-
see.
Right.
I think I see where you're looking at. Unfortunately, I must have sent out one that wasn't redlined. So
Okay.
I do apologize. So the redlining or the change was starting at the last sentence of the main paragraph.
All right,
So the change was to further eliminate appearance of a conflict. Committee members shall not
right,
be volunteers of funded agencies,
right,
and they shall not advocate on behalf of one funded agency when acting in the role of a HCCBG committee member. You're right, singular.
okay.
Okay,
And
this.
The
keep
second
going.
clause is out.
No, the second clause is this does. Okay, that's where the not should be.
Right,
This does not preclude members from advocating for aging services as a whole. Great catch.
I'd just like to comment that I had some trouble on bullet 2 with the notion of not advocating the first everything before the semicolon. Advocate on behalf of, you shall not advocate on behalf of one funded agency when acting in the role of HCCBG committee members. I understand the purpose of that, but if one of us has, if we've followed the conflict of interest stuff above, because we don't have any ownership, fiduciary, contractual, we aren't a volunteer, we have no relationship with those agencies. And I'll give you an example. For me, I have no relationship with Mountain Mobility, but I have a lot of history with paratransit programs. So I know things about paratransit programs. I know things about other programs we serve. And there may be times when I want to say, we need to do this for this program. Not because anybody's asked me or I have a relationship, but from knowledge that comes outside of those sorts of relationships. So I read that and I just said, does that mean I can't do that? If I advocate for one agency because I have, and I can see where if I had knowledge which came from a relationship. I mean, I have some historic knowledge of paratransit programs, but nothing, not Mountain Mobility. So I just raised that.
And I appreciate that, and it's very thoughtful. I'm wondering how we can word the bylaws to kind of get to the spirit of what our concerns were there.
It's a point that sits in a big gray area,
Yeah.
because I see Dan's point and coming at this space from the perspective of an advocate. I do have, you know, a concern for memory care and mountain care and so on and so forth, because I've seen how folks who need help and cannot get it, you know, what happens to them. I suppose the way out of, or the way to the sort of clarity we could add here would be to clarify what we mean by advocate. Because that's the word there. It's like, what does that mean?
I mean, I think what we're talking about is showing preference in a situation. I mean, like I think what we're talking about is showing a personal preference as opposed to advocating. You know, I think obviously you can and should have opinions. Maybe something like going in the other direction, you know, I can't think of the right word though, you know, maintain an even-handed approach. I mean, I think what we're talking about is not show personal preference,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that you can't, you know, recognize the value that an organization provides when we're looking at stuff.
Could we say something along the lines of, conceptually along the lines of, committee members shall not prioritize the concerns of one funded agency over another, although frankly, to my ear, that does sound kind of squishy. As it's written here, it's very general. I think there's a need to throw in a clause that that clarifies the intent.
Well, we're talking about impartiality, maybe something like treat all agencies impartially. I mean, I'm not sure that does it either.
Well, I'm jotting down all of these suggestions. And I don't know how others feel, but I still feel like we're not really articulating it as best we could. And I know where Dan's coming from. I understand the concern, but I have a lack of words for how to describe it specifically. Is that kind of where we are?
What would be a theoretical situation in which we would violate the principle? Like, what could come up? You know, under what circumstance would a volunteer on the committee violate the principle?
I think if somebody had an experience with a family member, a loved one, someone in their community that caused them to feel passionate about the need for particular services and brought that passion to the committee, and that it seemed that passion was driving them in a way that was showed more prejudice, I guess, toward others or toward what they're advocating for, something like that.
Yeah, I would see it more as a passion for the agency rather than the services, and maybe that's the distinction we need to make, you know. when
Eileen, can
you're-
you kind of elaborate on the difference between the
Well,
service?
I mean, yeah, I mean, if, you know, your mother-in-law is running the agency or your, I mean, there are different agencies that provide the same services. Okay, so if you have, the issue to me is if you have more than one agency providing the same services, and that may or may not happen a lot, you want the decision to be made on the basis of the information that you're provided about the agency, not personal feelings.
So kind of like not promoting one agency over another.
Yeah.
based on price. Yeah, okay, yeah. Campaigning, promoting, something like that.
Right.
Not prioritizing the interests of one over the other,
Yeah.
or the not
Yeah,
prioritizing
something like
goals of one over the other.
So I've been writing here just as something to throw out, is that in that statement that we affirm that we start with something like the role of committee member is to advocate for aging services as a whole. Members should be cautious in advocating for one agency. The chair shall note to the member when excessive advocacy is noticed.
I like that.
Okay.
I like that a lot, Dan. Can you like send that to the group as like an email? And what we can do is, where would you put it here? Would you put it right, like at the beginning of that first, the main paragraph?
Now I'm just thinking the bullet number 2 is that we switch it around, that we be or that maybe we add it as a separate paragraph. Yeah, I'd say I take out bullet number 2 and replace it with let's see, there's something that begins like the second part of bullet number 2. That's but I can write it down. The role, so it would be the role of the committee members is to advocate for aging services as a whole, and then followed by what I wrote.
Okay, well, you don't have to rush and send it to us right this second, but I think that's, I think that's really a good description. And what we can do is we'll take that and include it in these bylaws, and then rather than voting today to approve them, we can vote at the next month, so that everybody has a chance to kind of review it and ruminate over it to make sure that they're comfortable with that.
Okay, I'll send it on.
Very good. Excellent. Excellent, Dan. So I think the next red line is on section 3, appointments. And again, I apologize for it not being redlined. And it's section 3. And it is the fact that previously it stated that Buncombe County Commissioners shall appoint half the members to serve 2-year terms. But in reality, it is a 1-year term.
We don't need the half then.
Yeah, you're right.
Was it originally a 2-year term and now it's 1-year term?
I really don't know, Suzanne. That might have been something as a carryover from when it was in, when the lead agency was Land of Sky and not the county.
Sometimes when an organization starts, they'll have different terms for the initial board so that they don't all go away at the same time. So you might have, like, my guess would be that they had 2-year terms and half of them served a 1-year term, so that half of them would go off after 1 year and the rest would stay, and then you fill them and they alternate who's going off.
When we did these bylaws, I helped put them together, and essentially what I did was I took the bylaws, Jen provided me with a number of bylaws from local organizations, the HCCBG, whatever, what we do. And, first thing I did was just switched. These were bylaws from Union County. So I just switched Buncombe to Union. Union to Buncombe. And I don't remember about section 3, whether that was something from Buncombe or that we just took it from Union. But this is a good time to make it the way we want it.
Well, thank you, Dan, for that, because I had forgotten your role in developing these.
It was mostly cutting and pasting.
That's still an effort. And then the other change to highlight was in the last sentence of that section 3, a voting member is limited to no more than 6 consecutive terms. Are folks okay with that? The
I mean,
6
that sounds like plenty. Is that what the practice has been? That's 6 years.
Yeah, that's 6 years. Again, I don't know where the 6 years came from.
But I think that's kind of typical for public boards and commissions,
Mhm.
in that there's a limit, and if the commissioners want to keep you on beyond that, they can do that because they're the boss.
Well, they'd have to change the bylaws.
Could we add a blurb to that
I've
effect?
I've worked with boards and commissions in other places, and the elected officials don't care what the bylaws say.
No, I know they
They
don't.
want you to stay. They'll
But you have to follow the bylaws or you can get in trouble if something happens.
That's not been my experience with elected officials.
Well, that's been my experience as a lawyer. If somebody is looking for something to pin on you and they find out you're not following the bylaws, that's something they can do. Most people don't care, you're right. If nothing happens, nobody cares. As soon as something happens and you find somebody on the board has been doing something they're not supposed to be doing and they find out you violated the bylaws, then you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm. And that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Should we add a statement to the effect that the county, can make exceptions or ask
They
people
know,
to stay?
they know they can do that.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't mean somebody couldn't roll off and then come back on after a year.
Right, and most bylaws say that.
So should we?
I don't think you need to, because essentially it said voting members limited no more than 6 consecutive terms. So if you rolled off for a year and wanted to come back,
Technically, that's covered.
mhm.
Well, let's leave it at, how about this? Let's leave it at 6. And then we will be able to finalize next month. I hate to kick the can down the road, but personally, I think after 6 years, even though experience is very helpful in this committee, I think after 6 years, somebody would probably want a break. Oh, what happened?
Uh-oh.
Zach, what happened?
I found where I can show the red line.
Oh, cool. Okay,
Oh, there you go.
perfect. Thank you. And so in section 3A, it was just a kind of a typographical change there, his, her to their. And then I think we go down next to the election of officers. So we eliminated here the secretary because Billy's taken on the role of taking the minutes. And the officers shall be elected to serve a 1-year term limited to 4 consecutive terms. So I tell you what, guys, I am on my 3rd term and I will commit to another term. So I will work through my 4th consecutive terms. So just putting that out there, but I would really like folks to think about, and Zach, can you go to the next page, please? I would really like folks to think about who would want to be co-chair and perhaps then step into the chair position after another year. Well, a year and a half, really, almost 2 years. Let's see. All right, the one thing I want to point out, and I just found it. The vacancy of any officer of the committee may be filled for the balance of any term by a majority vote of the membership. So we could have like a nominating committee and everybody could vote. So think about that for for the luncheon and our next meeting. And continuing on, we remove the secretary, Zach. The meetings are the same. Notice of meetings, I think, are the same. The only thing I'm a little curious about, and Zach, you can go to yeah, perfect. For the last page, the section 1 amendment of bylaws. I'm not quite sure how I feel about the removal of the commissioner's approval.
I don't think they would like that to be removed. probably wouldn't be a major issue,
Yeah.
but I think they, if it's a county board, they've got the last word.
Okay. Okay, I'm comfortable with leaving it in. How does everybody else feel?
Makes sense.
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, I think we're okay on the bylaw changes. We'll make another set of red line, get it out to everybody, and we'll discuss it and try to finalize it next meeting. Is there any other questions or concerns, comments about the bylaws before we move on?
No.
Okay. Okay. Our wonderful units of service and the supplemental aging fund schedule. Before I forget, and Zach, I'm going to put you on the spot. If the new folks like Taylor and Cindy want to contact Zach for a one-on-one personal tutorial, he has been gracious in the past and has done that for folks. So I see you shaking your head. Are you okay as long as it fits in your schedule?
Oh, absolutely. That's what I'm here for. I know the units of service document can be a very confusing mess, but if you know how to read it, it makes it a lot easier and a lot better to kind of see where spending is throughout the year.
Mhm. And now, even though we're in the end of September, which is 3 months into the fiscal year, we really only have the document here for 2 months because of the reporting schedule from the providers, correct, Zach?
Correct. I should receive, we always run a month behind. So this is the units of service report for August, and in mid-October, I will get the data for September.
So just real quick, the columns are agency, the service. The fourth column is what they were awarded. So the net budgeted service cost. I'll jump to the 6th and the 7th, which is unit rate and grant budgeted units, which come from their applications. Then the units provided, also the consumer contribution units. And Zach, I'm going to need your help on this: units served but not reimbursed, because as I have had it explained to me, this is all of the units, and all the providers are encouraged to put their units in arms. However, they're only paid on a 1/12 portion.
That's correct. I'm gonna say that better myself. Susan, you want to take over the units of service reports for me?
No.
No, but yes, Susan is right. So the providers request funding through the Aging Resource Management System, or ARMS. And within that system, there is a 1/12 cap that is put on how much they can draw down each month. The units served but not reimbursed is a representation of that 1/12 of the payment, or whatever is over that 1/12 of the payment that they have not yet been reimbursed for. And you can easily determine how much they have not been reimbursed. If you take, for instance, Council on Aging's congregate nutrition line, you see that there's 174 units times their unit rate of 9.9703. That'll give you how much money they have not been reimbursed for the year so far. That doesn't mean that it's not going to be reimbursed, because what happens is whenever we move up next month to the next 1/12 payment, if they underperform, it'll absorb some of those units and pay out those units if they are if they haven't been reimbursed the full 1/12 of their total allocation.
And then you'll notice at the bottom, there's the yellow highlight and it says you should have spent 17% of your budget. And so that corresponds with the column that says grant percentage. And if you look at the next column over, you can compare 17% to what they have served. So to look at that congregate nutrition line, there's 17%, but they have served 19% of what they said they were going to. And as if you go down that column, percentage of grants served, you'll see transportation is already 2 months in, they've already provided more service. And Zach, we might want to look at Pisgah Legal, because at 74% over seems odd. Are you seeing what I'm looking at?
I do see that. That may be an error, because Pisgah Legal Services has always been kind of one of those special children that I've had to baby in this document, because their money is put in differently than most of the other units. So I'll double check my Excel document to make sure that that is correct, an accurate representation of what they have been spending. I don't necessarily believe that that is, though, because if you go by that, if they have 100 units that haven't been reimbursed by their $200 or so rate, so that's 2,000, that's not anywhere near the 63,000 that they are that they were allocated for this year. So I will double check that on my end and see if I can get that to an accurate number
When you return from Vermont. And so in the to kind of close out the unit of service, you'll notice that the top part is their agencies with unit of service, and then the bottom section is non-units amounts. And Zach, housing, Mountain Housing, didn't we have an update from them on why they haven't submitted or spent?
Yes. So I reached out to Joy Wilcox over there at Mountain Housing to ask her what's going on. Is it just that there hasn't been any projects lately, or is it just that it hasn't been entered into arms yet? And she informed us that they were in the middle of a lot of projects in for the month of July, August, and September, and they're planning to bill everything in this upcoming arms run. So we would prefer them to enter things in on time. We prefer all of our agencies to enter things in on time. However, if they are a little bit late getting their units entered or anything like that, they're not penalized for it. They can enter it in the following month and still receive their payout for it. The only time there is that hard cutoff is at the end of the fiscal year. If they don't have units entered in by the end of the fiscal year, sure hate it for you, but you're not going to get reimbursed.
Very good. So now we're going to put Billy on the spot with the with the supplemental aging funds. Oh, and before I forget, in-home aid is funded through both block grant and the supplemental aging funds. And it's very confusing. And I will tell you, it even confuses me still. So just a little caveat, and maybe I'll figure out a way to explain it better. So let me work on that piece. Now, also, I want you to notice that in the row, there is an indication of if they're going to bill monthly or quarterly. So if you look at On Track, which has no expenditures, you'll notice that they're going to be billing the county quarterly. And here, Billy, I'm going to put you on the spot with Mountain Care's transportation. So can you share with us what's
Yeah,
happening?
so Mountain Care reached out to me the last week in August and said that they would not be submitting they wouldn't be submitting an invoice for August. They didn't submit one in July either. They were finalizing the routes for 2 providers, and they were hopeful that these routes would be finalized the first week in September.
Good.
So I haven't heard from them since, but that's why they didn't submit an invoice for July and August. And so I was told that come September that there would probably be an invoice submitted.
So just to jog everybody's memory, Mountain Care has typically in the past used Mountain Mobility solely for the transportation of their clients. What has happened this year is we've made the decision to provide them some county funds so that they can explore options outside of Mountain Mobility and hopefully be able to provide the transportation that they would like for their folks. So I am excited to hear that they have contacted 2 private companies, and I'm really excited to hear about how that is going to work out over the next year. So I almost forgot. And for the new people, it happens every year that we have to make our decisions, our funding decisions before we know the actual final amount of funds that are going to come down through the federal government. So we budget to a $2.2 million pool of funds. And then, of course, after we make our decisions and let folks know, then the feds come back and say, hey, oh, by the way, we've recalculated your portion of funding. And luckily, we have received an additional $40,578. I don't have, Zach, I'm sorry, I didn't send that final recommendation out. So you can take the units, or is it in here? Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yes, it's in here. Whenever we receive the allocation, I put down the total allocation that Buncombe County has received. And then after things are budgeted, the remaining balance is that $40,578 that we have left to allocate.
Well, thank you for educating me on how to read the units of service report. So, and again, we did, and I look back in the meeting minutes and we all agreed that we would decide at the end of the first quarter. Well, it's kind of the end of the first quarter, but we don't have information about all of the first quarter allocations. So I hate to tell you, I hate to say this again, but we're going to kick the can down the road until we get September's numbers in October. Okay. So it's nice to have some extra money. It's always difficult to make a decision on where to allocate it. So Any other comments about units of service or supplemental funding, comments, questions?
I will just say again, if there's any questions or if anyone's needing a one-on-one, you can email me at zack@landofsky.org, ZACK, not ZACH.
Thank you, Zach. You're always very helpful. We appreciate you very much. So kind of the next steps, I want to thank Greg for keeping us on track with the date of our member appreciation lunch. And I've gotten a affirmative from both Rebecca and Cindy. So it will be at Land of Sky at noon, and then we will change our meeting to 1. It's going to be in the medium. There's a medium, not a big, but medium conference room that we'll be in, which is also, Zach, it's also wired all for communications, right?
Yes, it's why all of our conference rooms are wired for hybrid meetings.
Mhm. So do me a favor, I am going to make an assumption, and we know what happens when you assume, that everyone will attend. So if anyone has any kind of last minute schedule changes and you can't make it, please let me know so we can order the correct amount of food. And then the last thing on the agenda is something I want folks to think about. Is last year we went through a big round of visiting all of our providers. And I think we got feedback, both it was helpful and on the other side, it wasn't helpful. So I don't want to ignore the fact that we did the visits and not address it this year. So I want to see, maybe see if some folks could throw out ideas on what you'd like to do. Would you want to do site visits again? Would you want the new providers maybe giving presentations to everybody? Would you want to, I don't know, wait till the applications come in and only interview people you have questions about? It's kind of up to y'all.
Yeah, I thought they were helpful. It's one thing to discuss an agency in theory and look at their numbers on paper, but to go and to see and to talk to them, I found it helpful. And I don't recall, I didn't go to all the providers, so I wouldn't mind going to the providers this year that I didn't see last year.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if there were providers that we had more concerns about, maybe those should be prioritized in terms of visiting them. I can't, think of any one or the other that I, would feel that way about, but I found it helpful.
I was had bad health last year, and so I missed most of that. So I'd be interested in doing some visits.
I found it very helpful, especially being on the new side at that time.
So this just sort of popped in my head. What about doing kind of like a hybrid of maybe inviting like the new, one of our new providers, say, I don't know, Working Wheels, to do a presentation, and then maybe look at scheduling with other folks. I think also MAHEC is relatively a new grantee. Billy, can you help me with that? MAHEC, wasn't last year the first year?
I don't think last year wasn't the first year, but we never got around to Mayheck. They have a lot of scheduling issues, so I scheduled those appointments at least 3 to 4 times and then had to reschedule them. And in the end, we ran out of time. So if you were gonna do site visits this year, then Mayheck would be at the top of the list.
Mhm.
Yeah, Mayhack's an interesting organization and they have a lot of moving parts. I would be interested in a presentation by them or going to visit them.
Yeah, if we can't visit, maybe schedule a presentation if their scheduling is so tight.
Billy, do you think it's not enough time if we ask them if they could give a presentation at our next meeting? Do you think that would give them enough lead time?
I think that might be a little tight because I know they're having their geriatric summit in early November, and I know Tasha Woodall and Dr. Will McLean, who would be doing the presentations, they're on that planning committee. So, and they have really tight schedules. So I don't think the next meeting would be the best fit for them.
October?
It would be towards the end of October, and I think the geriatric summit is the first. I can ask them. I mean, I'll ask them and see.
I mean, could you do that?
Yeah.
And if they're developing that geriatric summit, that maybe they can just, modify one of their presentations. I mean, we're gonna, I would hold them to, I don't know, half hour.
Okay. No, I'd be happy to. No, they've already planned the summit, so I was just thinking because I scheduled with them at least 4 times last year, so I'll ask them. I'd be happy to ask them.
Okay, well, what do folks feel about maybe trying to do Working Wheels and Mayheck? And Billy, if you can coordinate maybe somebody next month and somebody, someone in October and someone in November.
Okay.
We'll see what happens.
That'd be great.
So I have 4:23 on my clock. Don't really have anything else on the agenda. The folks, does anybody have any announcements, concerns, questions before we wrap up for the day, the month?
No.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you 5 minutes back of your time. So thank you all for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will see you next month at the luncheon.
Yep.
Indeed.
Will do.
Looking forward to it.
Me too. Bye, everybody.